Friends, imagine you're going to a shopping market to buy some stuff, and suddenly you see that everything is dumped in a random manner. The food items, the grocery, the electrical items, everything. Now, what will happen? The time required to do the shopping will be increased, your efforts will be increased. And similarly, when we discuss about the living worlds, if there was no classification, then the efforts would have been increased to study about the organisms. And there comes the concept of classification. And today we are going to discuss about biological classification. What is the need of biological classification? So friends, biological classification is the system through which we are classifying organisms based on several similar characteristics so that it becomes easy for us, for the scientist, to study about this organism in an easy and simplified manner. So without any further delay, let us start the topic, friends. Today we are going to cover what is biological classification, which I've already told you, importance of classification of biology, and brief history of classification. So friends, the classification attempt has been done by various scientists. Some of them suggested two kingdom classification, some of them suggested three, four, and it extended up to six kingdom classifications. So we are going to discuss about these classifications in brief, and we are also going to discuss about the organisms, about the kingdoms in brief. So let us start about the very first attempt that was done by Carl Linnaeus. This particular person, Carl Linnaeus, also known as father of taxonomy, father of taxonomy, father of taxonomy. So guys, what is taxonomy? It is an attempt to classify the organisms in a systematic manner using various taxonomic hierarchies like kingdom, phylum, or species, genus, species, like this. Okay. So what happened, guys? This two kingdom classification was given by Carl Linnaeus, and it attempted classifying all the organisms, all the living organisms into two categories, plant and animalia. But however, this was not widely accepted because it had some limitations. What limitations? It was not able to distinguish between the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes that were part of, later on this became the part of the kingdom Monera. Why? Because these organisms in this category could neither be put under the plant kingdom nor they could put under the animal kingdom. So this was one of the limitations of this particular two kingdom classification. Whereas fungi later on it again became a kingdom, and unicellular organisms cannot be separated, cannot be classified separately. So this was another limitation of this two kingdom classification. They only tried to focus on classifying plants and animals, whereas the other animals like various unicellular animals and the fungi as well as the prokaryotes and eukaryotes were left behind. Later on, one more scientist tried to rectify the errors or which could not be covered in the earlier attempts. This was the three kingdom classification proposed by that was proposed by Ernst Haeckel in the year 1866. Now what he did, he classified plants, he classified animals, but he classified all the remaining organisms in a kingdom known as Protista. However, the classification of fungi in the Protista was not that evident, and was not that convincing enough, or the classification of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Though some of the other organisms like Euglena, Paramecium, they could be classified into this, they could be put into this category, but however the other organisms were left behind, and it included unicellular organisms such as Paramecium, amoeba, Euglena, etc. However, the other organisms, bacteria, yeast, etc. were put under this Protista category. So it was another limitation of the three kingdom classification. Later on, what we see the four kingdom classification by a scientist known as Copeland in the year 1956. We saw this attempt was done by Copeland. Now what he did, he introduced one more kingdom, that is kingdom Monera, in which he included other animals, other organisms such as bacteria. In Protista, as we discussed earlier, that all the unicellular organisms were included. Plant kingdom Plantae was having all the plants, and Animalia was having all the animals. But yet, we are not sure about the classification of the fungus or the fungi. So what happened? It separated prokaryotes that were basically put into the Monera category from the Protista. But however, we had no idea about where to put the fungus, okay, or the fungis. So now the most widely accepted classification is the five kingdom classification proposed by R.H. Whitaker. Proposed by R.H. Whitaker. But in this particular classification, what we had five kingdoms, okay, and these were classified on several criterias. What criterias? Like cell type, what sort of cell they are, eukaryotic or prokaryotic, body organization, whether they are having cellular level organization, organ level organization, organ system level organization, etc. Based on the mode of nutrition, whether they are autotrophic, heterotrophic, or and reproduction. Reproduction was a key criteria in classifying the organisms in this system of classification. And what were the five kingdoms? This is the widely accepted one, and this under this, all the bacteria were put under kingdom Monera, the very first kingdom. All the other unicellular organisms such as Euglena, Paramecium, Amoeba, they were put under Protista. All the organisms such as mushrooms, yeast, they were put under the kingdom Fungi. And you know about plant and Animalia. So this was a brief idea about the five kingdom classification or the classification attempts that has been made by the various scientists. So let us move towards the basic characteristics of all the kingdoms. Okay, so guys, what we have, kingdom Monera, kingdom Monera included unicellular, which means the organisms were made only of one particular cell, and they were prokaryotic, which means they were one of the most ancient type of cells, and they do not had any specialized nuclear membrane, and the nuclear envelope was also not properly developed. So this was the characteristic of the prokaryotic organisms. What are the examples of kingdom Monera? We have bacteria, we have cyanobacteria, we have cell wall was present, and basically the cell wall of the bacteria is made up of peptidoglycan. They focused on asexual mode of reproduction, in which only one individual is required. No partners are required for asexual mode of reproduction. And this mode of reproduction in bacteria is known as binary fission. What happens in binary fission, guys? The bacteria, it breaks into two parts, and each new part develops into a new organism. The mode of nutrition, it can be autotrophic, like cyanobacteria, they can prepare their own food, whereas heterotrophic, the other bacteria, okay, they are dependent on other organism for their nutrition. Now bacteria has four classification, okay, based on the shape they possess. Now the round shape is known as coccus, the rod shape is known as bacillus, the spiral shape is known as spirillum, and the comma shape is known as vibrio. So this is the basically the based on the shape, the bacteria have been classified into these four categories. So haven't you heard of Vibrio cholerae, the causative organism of cholera? Okay, so this were this was about the kingdom Monera. Moving towards the next slide, friends, we have kingdom Protista. It was again unicellular, guys. It was again unicellular, made up of only one cell. It was eukaryotic. Later on, evolved into eukaryotic. Okay, eukaryotic like the modern type of cells where the nuclear envelope, a proper nuclear envelope and well-defined nucleus is present. Now, what are the examples? Amoeba, Paramecium, Euglena. Basically, these are unicellular organisms. Now, most of these organisms were aquatic, having their habitat in the water. Okay, and locomotion by cilia and flagella. Cilia and flagella. Now, what are cilia? These hair-like projections that help in their locomotion are known as cilia. Whereas the long hair-like projection, it also help in their locomotion, is known as flagella. Now, they possess both the characteristics of autotrophs and heterotrophs. Why? Because under some circumstances, under favorable circumstances, they can produce their own food, whereas on some other instances, they were heterotrophic. So this was about the kingdom Protista. Moving towards the next kingdom, we have kingdom fungi or kingdom fungi. This kingdom was basically multicellular except yeast. Multicellular except yeast, and they were eukaryotic, which means advanced type of cells. Examples: yeast, molds, mushroom, etc. They are basically heterotrophic and saprophytic in the heterotrophic category. Now, what is saprophytic? Saprophytic is a mode of nutrition in which they are focusing the organism gets their nutrition from dead and decaying matter. So this is known as saprophytic mode of nutrition. Reproduced by spores. Spores is a outgrowth that when dispersed through air or any other medium, it gives rise to a new organism. And cell wall is made up of chitin. Cell wall is made up of chitin. Moving towards the next kingdom, friends, we have the kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae. Now, kingdom Plantae can be termed as one of the most advanced or higher organisms. It is multicellular eukaryotic, which means it is advanced, autotrophic, which means they can produce their own food. Examples: algae, bryophytes, angiosperms, gymnosperms. Okay, they are very photosynthetic, which means they can produce their own food in presence of sunlight. And cell wall is made up of cellulose. Cell wall is made up of cellulose. Moving towards the next slide, friends, we have the kingdom Animalia. The kingdom Animalia, one of the most advanced type of kingdoms. They were multicellular eukaryotic, which means advanced type, and basically heterotrophic, which means dependent on other organisms for their food. Okay, they had no cell wall. They have high mobility, which means they can move from one place to another place easily, which is not possible in case of other organisms. Okay, why? Because they are like plants or fungi, they cannot move from one place to another place. Complex organ system. Yes, friends, animals are characterized by the presence of complex organ system. Like in human beings also, we can say that we have several organ systems like digestive system, respiratory system, excretory system, etc. And basically most of the animals, all the animals, they reproduce through the sexual mode of reproduction. The sexual mode of reproduction. Now guys, this is a comprehensive table so that it will be easy for you to understand. Now, cell type in kingdom Monera is they are prokaryotic. In Protista, they are eukaryotic. In fungi, they are eukaryotic. In Plantae, they are eukaryotic. And in Animalia as well, they are eukaryotic. Cell wall, polysaccharide plus amino acid or peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan in kingdom Monera. Whereas in Protista, it may be present, may not be present. Okay, fungus cell wall is made up of chitin. Plant cell wall is made up of cellulose, whereas in animals it is absent. Organ complexity, the Monera is made up of it's a unicellular organism. Protista is also a unicellular organism. Fungi is multicellular except yeast. Plantae is multicellular, whereas Animalia as well, it is multicellular. Mode of nutrition in Monera, it is chemosynthetic, autotrophic or heterotrophic. What is chemosynthetic? That means they can produce their own food in presence of certain chemicals. In Protista, it is both autotrophic and heterotrophic. Fungi, it is heterotrophic by a process known as saprophytic mode of nutrition. In Plantae, it is autotrophic, whereas in Animalia, it is heterotrophic holozoic, which means the consumption of solid food is known as holozoic mode of nutrition. Now, friends, moving towards the next slide, what was the importance of classification? What was the importance of classification? It organizes the biodiversity. We have millions and millions of species. So, in order to make the study of the species easy, organized biological classification is the key. If we are able to classify all the organisms properly, it will be easy for us to understand and study. Help in identification, as I've told you, identifying organisms was possible just because we did the classification. Helps us in evolutionary studies of the organism and aids in medical and agricultural research. So, friend, this was a holistic idea about the biological classification. If you want to learn more, stay connected with Edufy.